All right. Canvas Real Estate Miami Lakes team. This is yours truly, Coach. Today is Wednesday, August 21st, and I want to just welcome each and every one of you, even though you're not here right now in person, that I am here with Carolina and Austin with First Origin Mortgage, our in-house lender. But if you do listen to this recording after the fact, I want to welcome you as well. So today I am going to be speaking and sharing with you a, a buyer consultation, a kind of revised buyer consultation in which I am motivated or better said, I have been motivated to do so due to the changes that our industry is currently embarking on. As all of you know, we are right now in the midst of a new business model, a new way of doing business after the NAR settlement. I know there's a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, a lot of worries, and trust me, this has kind of I cannot even explain the words as to what it has done to me from the onset. But as I sit here today, I am calm, cool, and collect. I am ready. I am armed and just taking it on. Just like everything else in life, life is about changes and it's about what you do with the changes and how you embrace them. So at the end of the day, uh, this training is just going to be, it's just going to serve to give you more leverage. It's going to give you more knowledge as I go through it. Just make notes for those of you, and I wish more of you would have joined me in person or at least through this Zoom virtual or this virtual Zoom, because as I promised, I'm this presentation, I'm going to forward it to you. So the only ones that will actually be receiving it is those that are part of my productivity coaching program, because I am an added value person and I have to give value to those agents that have committed to working with me at some point or another. And those that have not committed, then you are welcome to join me and be a part of the productivity coaching program. I'm getting ready also to amp that program up a little bit more. I've kind of put it on the wayside or on the side burner to a certain extent, but it's time to kick into action, time to kick into gear. Enough thinking, enough analyzing, enough worrying, and I'm speaking about myself. Okay, so it's time to get moving. So with that, um, the first thing I'm going to share is some of you may have already seen this if you participated in any of my trainings, or if you have done any one-on-ones with me, or if you've had the opportunity to sit with me during a buyer consultation. That's one of the added values that I bring to the table as part of the productivity coaching program. As you may be aware or not, the productivity coaching program is composed of three parts. Number one is me sharing and me helping you generate new business. That's the first component. The second component is a part of mentoring. If you want me to be involved in any of your transactions as a mentor, I will be more than glad to do so. And part three is I will go out with you if need be and walk you step by step as you meet with your customers, either during a listing presentation or to show your customers property to get them under contract. So that is all on the table for your taking, for your participation. If you have any questions, reach out to either myself or better said, Marlene and myself, and we'll be more than glad to walk you through that process and as to how it will look to you economically. So part of this and part of what I do in my buyer consultation, this is a 2-page sheet, as you can see. It's 1 page and 2 pages actually. Okay, this is here in the office, right? So this is what I normally do when I do a buyer consultation. But that's after I have gathered some information from the buyer themselves to a certain extent to qualify them, to get them to meet with me. Now, as part of this new NAR settlement, it cannot be stressed anymore than everything starts at the table. Everything starts with the buyer consultation, setting the expectations up front. So this part that I'm sharing needs to be one of the most important things for you to do moving forward in your business. And if you do not know how to do it, now is the time for you to do so, because the worst thing that could happen is that you start working with a buyer and you're going to show them a property and that seller is not offering you any compensation or is not offering your buyer a seller concession. And if that happens, that means you have just taken your buyer for a tour. You became the touring guide for your buyer for however long that is going to take. It could be 1 day, 3 days, 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year. Anybody who's been in this business long enough knows that working a buyer, you could start today, but you could be 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, and you're not done working with that buyer. And the caveat to that is the more time you invest, the more you want to make sure that you get compensated. So that is number one, first and foremost. Okay. So it all starts with the buyer consultation. Now, what has taken place is nothing new. My understanding is that the commercial business, that is the way business is done. You meet with an investor, you state and you write down, or better said, you outline the terms of your compensation, how you're going to get paid. Because guess what? If you take them to the property or the investment, you kind of lose control to a certain extent. But if you have something in written or in writing, better said, then you're covered. No big deal, because that buyer or that investor has committed and is knowledgeable or knows that you're going to get compensated because of the agreement that they made with you. Also, it is my understanding that the California model this has been the practice always. Okay, so forget about that millionaire real estate or the millionaire listings that my wife and I have grown fond to watching over the past 30 plus days. And the way these guys do business, they make it look so easy, but I'm sure it's not. But needless to say, the California model is you get something in writing before you walk or before you drive that customer to a property. And for all intents and purposes on this training, yours truly has used the buyer's agreement multiple times. I don't use it 100% of the time because a lot of my business is past clients, and I need to admit that sometimes I do get burned on and working in that manner, working with past clients. But I feel if one of my past clients seeks my services, that they're going to be loyal to me and work with me. So I don't want to put them on the spot although I should as a business person, but that's just a practice that I've taken. And I could tell you stories that I have been burned both on the buyer side and on the listing side, but I don't worry about it because someone greater than myself has my back and he will always provide for me. So it's on them. I work by the premise, I will bless those that bless you. And if they decide not to bless me, then that's fine. But that is the way that I choose to do business when it comes to my past clients. Now, moving forward, I will tell you that I will not be showing any properties, and that's just a standard that I have taken and that I'm going to be implementing personally myself. I will not work with a buyer unless they meet with me in person for the most part, number one, or number two, if I do meet them at a property, because it will happen, you have a listing, they call you, they want to take a look at it, or if you're buying internet leads, then the best practice is to meet them at a property. But when you get there, you need to have some sort of documentation that if you show them that property, if they walk inside to preview that property, if they get involved with it, then they will need to compensate you for your services and time. So that's just to put it on the table that before you work with anyone, it cannot be stressed anymore. You need to have a buyer's agent agreement. And there's three parts to it, as Ernesto has shared. And I want to thank you. I want to take the time to thank Ernesto for the time that you invested, the energy that you and your team have put together, or taken, better said, in helping us Canvas real estate agents to be prepared for this change that has come upon us in the real estate industry. So kudos to you, Ernesto. Kudos to you and your leadership team, and to my manager, office owner, Marlene, also for facilitating and being helpful and being there. And moving forward, one other thing that you need to know is that you have a strong leadership team behind you and your business. You have starts from the top with Ernesto, with Marlene, and then to yours truly speaking to you at this time. Now, to get something else out of the way here, there's going to be many questions that are going to be asked. And your replies could vary. If you want to do a one-liner, then here it is. If you want to give and go into a full explanation, here it is. This material that I am sharing with you, it is from Jeff Glover. He is a new coach that I am starting to follow. He's been in the industry for many years. He is based out of Michigan. He does have a coaching business as well. But the most important thing about Jeff Glover is that he actually is out there. He is listing properties, working with buyers. So he's in the trenches. And that's what you want to look for when you want to follow someone is, are they currently in the trenches? And this is why I'm bringing this material to you and sharing part of, or basically what I'm going to share is mostly of his, that he has put together, the material that he has put together. I'll add some substance to it, some comments, but what you're going to hear is from someone who's working this business at a high level. He stresses that he sells, just him personally, about 100 properties a year, whether on the buy side or the sell side. Him and his team, they produce over 1,000 transactions a year. He runs a team of 45 agents. So this is something that you want to emulate, you want to follow, you want to look up to, and that's why I'm choosing to bring this material to you. So here it is. A quick one-liner response to the public when asked about the change. While commissions have always been negotiable, what you pay is most likely not going to change. How you pay it is what's changing. So when somebody asks you, well, what's the changes? You could choose this one-liner and just expound if you want. And if not, just leave it there and see what other questions come out of that person or that consumer that is asking you the question. Now, people think that just because of this change, that our services are going to be free. No, someone has to pay. Either the seller is going to continue paying or the buyer is going to continue paying. Now, it's who is going to pay for that. And the choice is up to them. And you're going to help them with that decision as to who it's going to be. If you're good at what you do, then you're going to have the other side pay for your services. If you're not good, if you're mediocre, if you're average, if you're, just starting, whatever, then guess what? Your customers, your consumer are going to pay. They're going to pay the price, they're going to pay for you, and they're going to pay for all the headaches that they're going to go through and encounter because they have not been educated in this process and this new change. Now, the full response to the public when asked about the changes. Now, I'm going to be doing a little bit of reading here, so bear with me. So this is just for clarification, just for some individuals. They learn better when they hear audio audibly. Some learn more when they read. So it just depends on how on what is the best way that you learn. But at this time, just listen to the sound of my voice as I go through this, and then we could get I could broaden this or expand on these thoughts as I go through. So the U.S. Department of Justice was concerned that real estate agents were making consumers feel like they couldn't negotiate commissions, especially on the buyer side. This stems from the average 3% commission that has long been offered out to the buyer agents via the multiple listing service. Prior to the change, when a seller would hire a listing agent, a commission would be negotiated and an agent would then typically split that amount with the agent that brings the buyer and would then communicate that via the MLS. Because it has been promoted via the MLS all these years, the DOJ has stepped in and said that it's not fair to buyers because they should be aware of their agent's fees and should be able to negotiate them instead of the buyer broker getting what is offered via the MLS, no matter what the terms of the transaction were. So in essence, the Department of Justice, through the courts, they think they're doing the buyers a favor. Guess what? They did not really think this through because, as everything with the government, they think they're doing things for the people. And at the end of the day, the ones who get affected are the people and the citizens. Because in prior times and before the settlement, the seller usually paid our fees for services. Although within the price, it was structured that based on the buyers, whatever offer they made, and the seller based on their net, they would agree to compensate the listing agent and the buyer's agent. Now, I had, even before this lawsuit came about, I used to ask around jokingly, okay, so who pays for the commission? The buyer or the seller? And everybody, they looked at me and some people answered the seller, and it was usually always the seller. I said, my answer is whoever's the best negotiator. Okay. Now that's where you come into play. Why is it who is the best negotiator? Because you see, the seller has the power as to what they're going to compensate. starting with the listing agent. Okay. So if a seller is a strong negotiator and they're sitting with their listing agent, they're going to tell the listing agent, well, I'm not going to pay you 7%. And yes, I said 7%. There's listings out there that they are secured at 7%. I've secured listings at 7%, 6%, 5%, 4%, 3%, 1.5%. I'm sure if you've been in this business long enough, you have seen listings in the MLS that are compensate less than the norm 3% of what's being spoken about here. 2.5%, 2%, even 1.5%, 1%. So that is due to, number one, a strong negotiator on the seller side or a weak listing agent. Now, again, who pays for the commission? At the end of the day, personally, the buyer ultimately pays the commission because they're the ones that they're bringing the money to the table. So here, what they were trying to do, the Department of Justice, what they were trying to do was to save money or save the buyer's money. Guess what? They really have not done anything because at the end of the day, the buyer still pays for the commission. Okay. Now, the savvy investor, the savvy buyer goes out and works with a for sale by owner. Why? Because he knows that there's no commissions involved. And being that there's no commissions involved, then you're able to negotiate a better price. So if you're looking, and this is added value, and this is coach speaking to you, whenever you go out and buy a property, depending on how strong a negotiator you are, you want to look for those for sale by owner properties. Okay. This is just coach telling you. Okay. Because there's no commissions. So on a $500,000, 6%, you could basically say, hey, I could save myself $30,000. So if the neighbor next door sold for $500,000, he had a listing agent and he paid a commission. You come to the seller, the for sale by owner. Hey, Mr. For sale by owner, I like your house, but guess what? I'm not going to pay you $500,000 because your seller, your neighbor sold for $500,000 with a commission, but you're not paying a commission. So I'm expecting you to reduce that price. Okay. And this is a conversation. And I know this is a buyer consultation, but again, as coach and as an added value individual that I am, this is a conversation to have with the for sale by owners. Okay. That they're going to be encountering individuals, and that the ones that get most interested in their property are usually investors or buyers that they know that specifically are going to target them. And guess what? They're going to do all the work on their own. They're going to sell it. They got to find an attorney. They got to, or a real estate agent to put the contracts together, to coordinate the transaction and do everything that we do and that we get compensated for. However, they're going to be doing it for a buyer if they sell it on their own. Now, the ones who buy for the most part, and a disclosure, most buyers that buy for sale by owners, I will have to say that unless they negotiate properly, they are basically going into the process with a lack of education. Okay, because a lot of them, whatever the seller is paying, if they don't have a buyer rep representing them, they don't know what the value of that home is. They don't know what their neighbor, what the area of sales are, and they're just going to pay full price without having someone represent them. Just like I did an open house a little bit over a week ago, and there was a buyer that came in, the only buyer actually that came in, and I posed a question there, and one of our agents was there, and she said, she just looked at me and said, man, I've never heard of that. But I told him, Mr. Buyer, let me ask you a question. If you were involved in a legal lawsuit, and or better said, if someone was suing you, would you hire that attorney that is suing you? Would you hire him to represent you? And the guy just looked at me and he was like, no, I wouldn't. And he was just like puzzled and, dumbfounded that that's basically because he said, no, I like to go to the listing agent. And I just told him, well, that's basically what you're doing. Who's going to watch out for you? Who's going to negotiate for you? And then I told them, I went into my favorite part of the my buyer consultation, that we as real estate agents, as a buyer's agent, that we have three roles. Number one is the consultant. Number two, as the negotiator. And within the negotiations, there could be a minimum of three right off the bat. One is the price. Two is once the appraisal comes back. And three, once the inspections come back. And then the part of the coordinating of the transaction. And when I told him that, he kind of like agreed. And guess what? He called me after he left there and he says, hey, Joel, I would like to work with you and, just send me whatever properties you get, so on and so forth. But we haven't had the opportunity yet to sit down and have this conversation that I'm having with each and every one of you, or whoever it is that's listening to. So let's continue reading here. Now, second paragraph or third paragraph. Now, to prevent steering and to encourage negotiations between all parties, a set buyer agent commission amount may not be offered via the MLS. Hold on for a second, because I'm just thinking of something. And I don't know how this Zoom was set. Okay. Just want to make sure that, yeah, no, not the recording, but people able to join without me granting them access, because sometimes Ali sets it up in a way that we have to grant access. So I just wanted to make sure. Let me just check my WhatsApp, make sure. All right. Well, nobody's on there. So as I continue here reading, the third paragraph says, now to prevent steering and to encourage negotiations between all parties, a set buyer agent commission amount may not be offered via the MLS, but it may be offered elsewhere, websites, flyers, email communication, etc. However, seller concessions may still be offered via the MLS. Okay. So I know Ernesto and the complete real estate industry has been told that we cannot offer compensations through the MLS, but hear me out, okay? And I was on a training yesterday with Jeff Glover. Oh, there's about 50+%, he said 51%, but let's just say 50% of the MLSs out there, they are allowing for compensations to still be offered through the MLS. But for all intent and purposes, we need to abide by what's going on here and by what Ernesto has taught us and has coached us as to what our practices and standards are going to be. All right, so going back to the sentence, however, seller concessions may still be offered via the MLS, which can be used towards buyer's agent commissions and any other closing costs the buyers may have. While it's ultimately up to the seller, offering closing cost help up front to the buyers may entice them to make an offer on homes offering concessions versus the competition. Since buyers are not used to paying commissions and listings not offering concessions could wind up costing the buyer more, please note, if your brokerage or MLS is not allowing a set concession or buyer agent commission, you will have to modify your language to fit the above paragraph. Last paragraph. Finally, to further encourage transparency of fees, the DOJ is requiring real estate agents to have a signed buyer agency agreement with a buyer so that the buyer is fully aware of the commission that their agent is being paid. Okay. So reading this, I'm getting a big aha that whether I have a past client or not, this is part of the regulations that a buyer must have a buyer agency agreement and letting them know that how the real estate agent is going to get paid. Either the seller through his concessions, through their concessions, or through the compensation they're offering their listing agent, or them as a buyer, they're going to be compensating us. Now, also remember what Ernesto has shared. Start at 3%, minimum 3%. You could go down, but you can't go up. Okay? So that's the way Ernesto explained it, and that's the way I'm sharing it with you. Continue on this paragraph. This same document will explain to the buyer that if the seller is not willing to cover the costs of the buyer agent, the buyer is responsible for any difference between what's negotiated from the seller and what's expected per the buyer agency agreement. So on this next page, I'm going to deviate again from the buyer consultation. And this is just for those of you who are going to be working both sides of the transaction, who are going to be meeting with sellers. So this is an added value as to the benefits of offering seller concessions on or off the MLS or buyer agent commissions off the MLS. So this is Jeff Glover's position. Number one, offering buyer concessions or buyer agent commissions will entice buyers to want to make an offer on a listing and may choose a listing over one not offering either. Okay. Again, being that we're telling the buyers that if the seller does not offer a concession or does not offer a compensation to their listing agent, that they would have to compensate us. Guess what? When we explain and when we go through a buyer consultation and explain the process to the buyers, guess what they're going to do when we present them properties? They're going to want us to show them the properties, or better said, get involved with properties that concessions are being offered by the seller. So that's the importance of having this or knowing about this, and especially if you're a listing agent. That way you could explain it to your seller as well. Now, this has been a practice for decades, and I don't see buyer behavior changing on this one anytime soon. Number two, offering buyer concessions or buyer agent commissions may cause a buyer who couldn't otherwise afford the cost to close on a home to now consider, thus driving more traffic to the listing. More traffic equals more offers, and more offers equals more money or better terms. So again, if a seller offers concessions, they're going to see more buyers walking through their properties. Number three, offering buyer concessions or buyer agent commissions shows the buyer that you are flexible and a reasonable seller to work with. Now, when I heard this yesterday, I almost fell out of my chair. Why? Because if a homeowner right off the bat is not willing to offer a concession or compensate the listing agent that will compensate the buyer's agent, what makes you think that when times come for negotiation, they're going to be any more flexible? So just think about that. Now, buyers may enter negotiations on a property already promoting them as a fair seller to deal with. So let's not be too tough on them versus a seller who starts the negotiation off by offering nothing, potentially causing a buyer to take the mindset of, if they're going to be cheap, then let's go in low. Okay. So again, I know this is a buyer consultation class, but this is also information for you to have when you're representing and you're going into a listing. Okay, you could take these words right off, or copy these words, or take an image of it and just incorporate it in your um, listing presentation. Number 4, offering buyer concessions or buyer agent commissions shows buyers that if there are issues with the home or worse, an appraisal issue, and again, this is similar to number 3, an appraisal issue, that the seller may be fair and reasonable in working with them after an offer is accepted, since they were from the beginning by offering the concessions or commissions up front. So a lot of this, remember, in our industry, in our business, a lot of what we do, there's a lot of psychology behind it, a lot of mind games, mindset. Okay, so this just goes along that line. Number 5, finally, and I don't like this one and don't personally do this and do not encourage it. However, there are still some agents out there that may hide listings that are not offering concessions or buyer agent commissions, or at a minimum, deter buyers from these properties by pointing out the negatives right away by saying things such as, this property is way too close to a main road, the resale will be tough, or even more direct. The seller is not offering concessions to help you with your closing costs, and therefore they will be a jerk during the negotiations. Again, I don't agree with this, but it does and will continue to happen, and this could ultimately affect showings negatively. Now, again, if you've been in this business long enough, you will know who the bad apples are, who are the bad apples out there, meaning the listing agents or agents who are just, that when you come across one of their listings, you really don't want to work with them because they could be, I'll just say it, they're jerks. Okay. So bottom line is, know who they are, and when you come across them, you have a choice to work with them or not. Or if you decide to work with them and engage them, you need to work at a higher level and not be so easy peasy or so cheerful. Just be cutthroat, just as they are. So what's the lesson here? Listing agents should do everything they can to help the seller understand the value of offering concessions up front in the MLS, if your MLS allows it, or at a minimum, a buyer agent commission communicated via other means. It truly is in the best interest of the seller and is a good thing for the industry. So I'm going to take a pause here because I have an audience and I've been speaking now for, wow, almost 40 minutes. So I got questions. Carolina, or not questions, I'm opening it up for them to ask me questions of anything that I've shared. So I'm going to, Austin, this is the first time you sit on one of my trainings, and one of my policies is that ladies go first. Okay. All right. So Carolina, any questions, any big ahas so far on anything that I have shared?
About the listing. No, if the seller is not offering a concession
Yes.
to the buyer, but what if the ABC Realty policy says you are not going to offer something to the buyer?
Okay.
What the person would do?
Okay. So as you're making appointments, again, you're going to share the properties. So it depends what your practice, what your standard is when you're working with buyers. Okay. Buyers have access to all the listings. So for me personally, I have taken a practice or made a practice that I share everything that's in the MLS, because the last thing that you want is for a buyer to call you out and say, hey, why didn't you bring that property to my attention? Okay. So what I'm doing now, and that before I didn't because I had the MLS, but now you call the listing agent and you ask them, what is the compensation that your seller is offering? Are there any concessions? And I write it down as I'm making the appointments, and I could show you because I've been working with a buyer now, and that's what I just did last week, or actually on Saturday. And basically I wrote down what their concessions are, or the compensation is. If you find that agent that is not offering compensation, or that seller, based on what we just shared, then you're gonna write it down. But now, if you did what you were supposed to do during the buyer consultation, you tell your customer, okay, I got these 5 properties, and I want you to know that this particular one is not paying any compensation. If we see that property and you want to get involved with it, know that doesn't mean that you're gonna pay my compensation. I'll make an effort as a negotiator, as your negotiator, to get the compensation paid by the seller, or ask for a seller credit, and then you could compensate me from that. But do know that right off the bat, they're not offering any compensation. Did I answer your question? All right, awesome. And any other big ahas?
No.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, great, awesome.
All right, so I've been seeing realtors get a little hesitant asking people to sign the buyer broker agreement,
Okay,
especially like with these old school clients too, who are used to, just being in the game, like, it's good faith, they don't want to be really attached to it.
yeah.
So what are the key strategies and points you as a vendor realtor are going to take to get them on your side and get them to sign that buyer broker agreement?
Okay, so great question. So as I was reading that, and you saw me that I hesitated, that the DOJ, part of the DOJ agreement was that a buyer needs to know what their who's paying for the compensation. And they're expecting, or the mindset behind this is that before an agent goes out, that a buyer, some sort of an agreement is signed up front. Now, in regards to, there's 3 options that we have as real estate agents before we work with a buyer. Is one, there's a one pager that it's a touring, that we let the buyers know, okay, I could show you these properties. We're going to name them. We're going to put them on a piece of paper. And if, you get involved with any of these properties, then the compensation, you need to pay me 3% if there is no compensation or concessions made by the seller. So that's one option. There's a second one that it's, and I don't have it in front of me right now, right off the top of my head, right off the top of my head, it slips my mind. There's second option, and there's the third option, and actually the exclusive buyer agents agreement.
Yeah.
But there's options that those agents have. So, they don't, and again, it's happening to me because I have a customer, it's a past client. I know how it works. I'm currently working with them without anything signed, but I started working with them before this process started. And today, we're seeing another property. We've already seen 4, and chances are he's going to make an offer. But he knows, I actually did a 2-step presentation with him. One day he came here, we talked about his financing and all that. And by the way, Omar is doing that financing, your team.
Yeah.
So, okay. And then before I took him out to see properties, I brought him back in and explained to him this whole process. I didn't tell him to sign anything, because again, he's coming to me. I don't want, I don't want to be a buffer. Again, he's showing good faith because he's coming to me. He could have chose one of the 80,000 agents in South Florida. So I don't want to push him. So if I'm going to be flagged on that, I'll pay the penalty. Right. I'd rather pay that penalty, whatever it is, $500, $1,000, than lose a relationship with someone that he's looking up to 700,000. So I'm looking at a potential 21,000, anywhere between 15 and 21,000. Right. So I'll pay the fine. I've made that business decision.
It's hard to walk on. Are you gonna push this little contract on them, or are you gonna lay off a little bit and kind of work on the relationship?
Absolutely, and again, it's about the standards that those agents have. So any of those agents that you're working with and that having the hesitancy, they really need to get into some sort of training. They need to take the ABR, and I recommend there's one particular instructor out there who is great, who I also started following. So This has been the season of the new instructors and new coaches speaking into my life. So Josh Cadillac, I met him during the ABR, great instructor, and I'm following him. Actually, he has a program, $20 a month that he has these masterminds. So, you know, again, the guy is so humble and you know, but just great. And then this guy, Jeff Glover, that I'm just, you know, starting to follow. Okay. So did I answer your question? All right. Awesome. So we continue. So in part of the buyer presentation, now we're going to get into some questions of the buyer presentation or some scripts. And we're yet to go into the buyer consultation. So it's almost 12 o'clock. I'm going to end it at 12:30. So don't worry, no fears. You could time this. I know I could go on for those that will be listening after the fact, because you'll listen to it in bits and pieces, but at least for Carolina that has to get back to work here, and Austin, who is being so gracious of accompanying me in this training for time purposes. At 12:30, I'll be signing off, right? So presenting the buyer contract concept to buyers prior to meeting them, okay? So you may or may not have heard that agents are now required to have signed agreements. And this is your conversation with the buyers, okay? And this goes to your question, or actually to your question, Carolina. All right, so you may or may not have heard that agents are now required to have signed agreements with buyers prior to opening a lockbox to show you a home. Because we have not met yet, I would never expect you to enter into an agreement with me this early in the process. So I'm going to have you sign what is called, and I believe our form is a touring agreement, a pre-tour agreement. Here it says non-exclusive one property, buyer service, etc. agreement, and know that it only applies to this and these showing and does not lock you into you using me for anything relating to your real estate purchase outside of this or these homes. I will email it to you to review, and we can connect prior to the showing for me to walk you through it. Sounds good? Okay, so that's one position and one way that you could offer this. And again, as I said, especially if you're meeting someone off a listing site, one of your listings, they called you, they want to meet you, you know, you're not going to tell them to come in. You know, if that listing is, let's say in Homestead, you're not going to tell them, hey, you know, meet me here in Miami Lakes and then we'll drive out to Homestead. No, you meet them at the property. They probably live in the area. And so you share that with them. Here's another one. Presenting the new compensation model to buyers during the buyer consultation. Okay, so now we're getting closer to the buyer consultation. Based on everything we've covered today, do you feel that I can help you secure the right home in a reasonable time frame? Perfect. Then you're probably wondering what all of this is going to cost you, right? The good news is that all of this and everything I do to help buyers secure homes may cost you nothing at all, and here's how. Part of my job is to negotiate the best deal for you, and as part of those negotiations, I'm going to ask the seller to contribute closing costs, concessions, which could cover some or all of my 3% fee. The even better news is you don't have to pay me anything until we're sitting around the closing table and I'm getting you your new set of keys. Sounds good? So that's a script, okay, that you're going to incorporate as part of your buyer presentation. All right. Here's another one. Does this mean, and this is the buyer, does this mean I have to pay you now? Not necessarily. And quite honestly, as a buyer, you have indirectly been paying your agents. Now you're putting that seed in. You have been paying your agents commissions the entire time. Think about it. The seller has a price in mind, and it's usually based on a few factors, such as market value and what they'll net. Well, what factors into their net? Their cost. Therefore, even though we were paid out of the listing agent's commission, and again, going back to the original conversation, I asked, who pays the commission? Here's the answer. Well, what factors into their net? Their cost. Therefore, even though we were paid out of the listing agent's commission, when buyers bought, it was really paid for by the buyer in the final selling price of the home. Does that make sense? Now, today, buyers will pay the commission directly to the brokerage as a closing cost, as opposed to the seller in their sale price. And that's only if we can't get the seller to provide a concession to help you cover it. Does it make sense? Now, when I read this, it just kind of, let me try to find the right word. My wife uses this word. It just kind of cemented what my thinking was. But now here's another professional that has the same thinking as me. And what's exciting about this is that now we could use this legally when we're consulting our buyers. And this is where we bring value to the buyers and to the services we render. Because if we explain to them, okay, this is the way business was done before. Now, this is the way business is done now. And I'm here to help you throughout this whole process. And again, my compensation is going to come from the seller. Obviously, they're paying it, but they're not going to get into that negotiation with that seller. They're not going to get into that negotiation with the listing agent unless there's someone sharp at their business and say, hey, Joel just shared some great information with me. I'm going to use it to my advantage. But, you know, chances are if they're coming to work with you, you know, they've always had the option. Again, that's the whole thing about this NAR settlement, that everything that they're trying, or that they were trying to implement, or however, man, what I'm thinking is these attorneys that were representing us, and I don't know who they are, and they're high, you know, they could be high profile attorneys that they were representing our industry. Man, they did a real bad job in representing us, because if it would have been me, I would have been speaking to that jury and I would have told them, jury of the court, Your Honor, let me explain to you how the real estate industry works. And blah, 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 blah. And I want you to keep this in mind as you deliberate and how you're going to, you know, come to, you know, make a decision on this case, because this is the way it's always been. The sellers have always had the three options. They could go they could have a full service listing. They could find a discount broker, or they could do it on their own for sale by owners. Buyers, they could hire a real estate agent. They can negotiate with their real estate agent. I've had buyers negotiate with me, asking me, hey, you know, if I go directly with you, does that mean that you're going to share your commission with me? Because, you know, and this is on my listing. And I said, no, I have a listing agreement that, you know, whether you buy with me or not, I'm gonna get compensated X amount of dollars. Or they could go directly to the sellers. That hasn't changed. That was the way it was before. And now they've brought this on, thinking that it's going to improve it's gonna lower the cost. No, what they're doing is they're increasing the cost to these buyers, and the sellers, which I think some of them are a little bit too greedy, they're going to take advantage of some of these buyers that they haven't been consulted properly. And I blame us. If anything, I blame us, the industry, the real estate industry, that the reason we're looked at the way we're looked at is because we have failed as to what our number one role is, which is to educate the consumers out there, to educate the public, educate our customers. We have failed. Why? Because it's very easy to get into the real estate industry. And, you know, that's a topic for another day. All right. So here's the last buyer question. What if I can't afford it? The good news is getting help with closing costs is an absolute acceptable ask and it will be my number one priority in making sure the seller understands the need to help you with your closing costs so you may purchase their home with minimal out of pocket. Now, we find ourselves in a multiple offer situation. I may suggest that you don't ask for help from the seller to cover your costs. And in that case, you will be responsible for covering them. If you think you're going to be unable to do so, I suggest we get on the phone with your lender, Austin Palacios, right away to discuss options so we are crystal clear on your buying power if we find ourselves in a multiple offer position. Sounds good? And all right, louder, Austin. I don't know if your voice is. All right. So Austin has a program that the commissions of the buyers are able to be incorporated. Is that true? All right. I haven't listened to your training yet, but that was my understanding.
Yeah, and be careful too, because it does affect DTI. At the end of the day, it has to be financed into a loan, and obviously a higher loan amount affects your buyer.
Okay.
Keep that in mind.
Okay.
Definitely listen to Joel, become a strong negotiator, fight these sellers, man. They're gonna be rough housing everybody. First, act. I'm sure the second act is gonna come around and everything's gonna stabilize again. How it was before, so.
Absolutely. And Austin has had the opportunity to work with me. We're currently working, what, 3 transactions, or not directly, but 3 transactions that he's actually doing the financing. And he has seen me, as to how I operate and how I keep things moving forward. We're currently working on a transaction since what, June, I think it is. Since June that we got on the contract, and we still haven't closed, but that was talking about 3 negotiations. No, this has been 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 negotiations. It wasn't only price. It wasn't only appraisal. It wasn't only inspections. We've had to negotiate beyond that. And now we're on the part of negotiating loan approvals, not because of Austin. Austin's been ready, but because of things that the sellers have had to do. So it's been fun. It's sharpened me. I was getting my axe was dull, Austin. Before August and before May, my axe had gotten dull. But I had to sharpen up.
The way you do it.
Oh, I lied. There was more buyer questions. Okay, so we continue. It's okay. All right, so here's a buyer question. Sounds like I'll save money if I work with the listing agent. How many of you have heard agents or buyers say that? I had one 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. All right. So you most certainly could, at least on cost. And let me ask you, how do you plan on getting the best deal on a home by working with the agent that was hired to get the best deal for the seller? Man, I wish I would have had that script that day. That was, man, the fireworks would have gone off behind that customer that I was talking to. Most sellers today have already budgeted an amount to go towards a buyer's broker since they've been doing so for decades. This entices agents to show their home versus the competition. If you made the decision to work with me, I will fight tooth and nail and will do everything I can to help the seller understand just why they should work with us and sell to you. That's my job. Finally, let's just say you do end up having to pay all or portion of my 3% fee, but you save X amount of dollars on the sale price and or secure the home in a seller's market. Wouldn't it be worth it? So again, that was my big aha. And I said the big aha was earlier. No, here is the big aha, because now, especially that the market is changing, if you go to bat for a buyer that now the seller is going to pay for your compensation right off the bat after you had the buyer consultation with them, and now you show them, when you start showing them properties, that you're going to lower that price, now that's a double win for them. Even if you save them $5,000, $10,000. So I was thinking about this with the calls that I made on Saturday. And what I did notice is that the commissions have come down. So out of 4 agents that I spoke with, 2 of them were compensating 2%. 2 of them were compensating 2.5%. If I would have had a buyer agent agreement with my past client at 3%, when submitting the offer, I'm going to tell them, look, remember that we agreed that you're going to pay me 3%. This particular seller is only paying 2% or 2.5%. I don't know what home he's going to get involved with, but I'm going to negotiate a seller credit for you. Out of that, that's how you're going to make up the difference to my 3%. If I'm able to do that, man, I've done my job. I've got him my 3%. My buyers are happy. And if I'm able, and if that part of that fee, let's say $10,000, and on the one that's paying 2 on 700,000, 7,000, and he's able to keep another 3 for his seller, for his closing costs, man, that's a win-win. So when I saw that, man, I started wringing my hands. I said, man, this is going to be good. It's time to make some money. Okay. So that's what's exciting about doing the buyer consultation, getting the 3% right off the bat. That before this, it was open season. Man, buyers go out there, listing agents double-ended the deals, and it was survival of the fittest. Now it's a little bit more structured. So I like this. I kind of like this change now. Now, as I think about it, I love it. Okay. I don't like it. I love it. All right. Last question. I'll just hire an attorney to represent. Your answer. You can most certainly do that. And in my experience, attorneys are really good at understanding contract law. And do you know what they don't do day in and day out? They don't handle price and term negotiations. They don't handle inspection issues. They don't get involved with appraisal negotiation. They don't touch any finance issues. And they certainly don't have experience like I do in getting a deal to a closing table. Do you see the difference now? So for those buyers that they have their high-powered attorney and they say, oh, I'm going to have my attorney, represent me. Okay. But let me ask you, is your attorney going to negotiate on your part? Are they going to handle inspections for you? Are they going to handle the financial issues? Okay. The terms, the price. Are they going to do any of that? And I'm just going to sit. Huh? Oh no, but did you hear everything I said? They don't handle price and term negotiations. They don't handle inspection issues. They don't get involved with appraisal negotiations. They don't touch any finance issues. And they certainly don't have the experience like I do in getting a deal to a closing table. Okay. So I could bring Ina. I love Ina or any other attorneys with Title Logic, but I tell them, hey, are you going to do all this for your buyers? And they're going to tell them, you know what, Joel, I have a law degree and I get paid for interpreting law and writing contracts, not for all these negotiations. And that's that. Oh, I'm lying, making myself be a liar. So more questions, buyer questions. What if I don't want to sign an agreement to work with you yet? Your answer is going to be totally understand. We just met. If you prefer, wait, no, I think I did this. Did I? No. Okay. Totally understand. We just met. If you prefer, we can work in a non-exclusive capacity until we feel comfortable with one another, so long as you're aware of the way commissions work today and that you will be responsible for your side of the commission. If we are unable to get a seller to cover them for you, should you purchase any of the homes we show you, sounds good? They will still need to sign a document showing what you charge should they buy from you. And last question. I've heard there are no cost agreements to see homes. Do you honor that as well? And your answer is going to be, of course. It will never cost you anything to view homes with us, as you only pay for an agent's services at closing, and you may not have to pay anything at all. May I explain? Part of my job is to negotiate the best deal for you, and as part of those negotiations, I'm going to ask the seller to contribute closing cost concessions, which could cover some or all of my 3% fee. The good news is, even if you did have to pay a portion, you don't have to pay a dime until we're sitting around the closing table and I'm getting you a new set of keys. Sounds good? All right, so I did do that. Now, going into the buyer consultation, and I know I'm running out of time here. So part of the process is a buyer pre-qualification sheet, okay? So there's a buyer pre-qualification and there's buyer qualification questions. So kind of similar, but not the same, all right? So you're going to have these, and what's recommended is that you have these questions, memorized. That way, you know, if you actually have a good buyer, someone that is, that you're going to invest time with. Because if they're not ready, then, why are you going to schedule them, an appointment? Why are you going to meet with them? Although part of our value is meeting with someone who's interested in becoming a homeowner, and you got to walk them through the process, because you don't know if they're ready now. They'll be ready 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. But if you do what you're supposed to do, then those individuals, they'll stay connected with you. And again, you got to stay in connection with them. It's a two-way street. So when you meet somebody out there and they're renting, and that they want to become a homeowner in the future, and it's a two-way street. It's not only them staying in communication with you, is you doing what you're supposed to do, which is to put them in their database. You drip on them, you contact them periodically, ideally, on a quarterly basis. You send them emails every now and then, send them a text here and there, keep them, stay on top of mind. And if you do that, chances are when they're ready to make that decision, they're going to be seeking out, they're going to be giving you a call. Okay. So that is part of what you'll be doing with these buyer pre-qualification question and the buyer qualifications. Buyer pre-qualification and buyer qualifications questions. So I'll leave it up here long enough. If you want to take an image of it. Yeah, no, you're going to be getting a package of this. You're going to be getting this whole presentation package. So you're good. Yeah, so don't worry about it. And here's the buyer consultation. Oh, actually, there's two here. Give me a second. Right. So here's a buyer pre-qualification real slowly. I'll scroll. For those of you who are still following me. And then this one is the buyer qualification questions. All right. So now we're into the buyer consultation, and I'm going to refer you to the front as I started. Here's my buyer presentation, but now I'm going to fast forward, and I'm just going to touch on 10 points here. And it happens to land on page 11. I'm just going to read this one page. Let me see here. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to read any. Okay. So here's step one. Qualify and select. Okay. So on the bottom of the page, during the process, we will ask you several questions to determine the specifics of what you're looking for and when you're looking to be in a home buy. This is basically what we're going through right now. In addition, we suggest you speak with our in-house mortgage lender, Austin Palacios from First Origin Mortgage, to discuss financing options or get a second opinion. Okay, so that would be step number one. Step number two is we're gonna do a listing search. We're going to search the multiple listing services, use our resources to find about properties the day they hit the market, sometimes even before they come on the market. And I would add to that, if you are committed to this business, you need to know who are the for sale by owners in the area that you work at. And to do that, there's third-party companies out there. There's RedX that every agent receives it from our office in their email inbox, and you could search and see what for sale by owners are there. Personally, I've been tracking for sale by owners for the last 2 years religiously in about 14, 15 zip codes, because that's part of my my model, or my lead generating model, which is prospecting for sale by owners. And now I've opened it to the whole South Florida area. Okay. Any for sale by owners, we're making a note of it. Okay. Because of a promotion that I was going to do at the beginning of the summer. Here we are almost at the end of the summer, but I'm still going to implement it. And it is due to this change that I'm going to be making a proposition to homeowners, to for sale by owners. Okay. So part of your process needs to be knowing what for sale by owners out there. So it's not just showing properties in the multiple listing services. Step number 3, view homes. Okay. So during this process, you will be shown homes by me or one of our, and this again, this is from Jeff Glover, and he has a team, and he says, you will be shown homes by me or one of our well-respected licensed showing agents. The showing agent's job is to set up the showings with the sellers, map the best route, saving you time and gas, and of course, show you the home. If you have any questions while viewing a home, you can be sure your question will be noted and passed along to the seller or listing agent for answers as soon as possible. So that's part of your role as a buyer's agent. Now, if you're listening to me, and this is something that I'm going to do, I have a buyer proposition. Use these steps that I'm showing you to create your buyer proposition. And I'm going to be revising the current one I have, because this is a little bit more in depth than what I currently have. Okay. So you should have a seller proposition, a seller value proposition, and a buyer value proposition. On the seller value propositions, you share with your sellers or any prospective sellers. Your buyer value proposition, on a renter, you come across a renter, share it with them. Okay. So make a note of that. One action step that each and every one of you should do is create a buyer or seller value proposition. Step number 4, a market analysis. When you come across a property that they're ready to make an offer, you're going to do a CMA, just like you would do for a seller. And based on that, then you're going to make a suggestion and a recommendation to the buyer, or you ask the buyer, as I normally do. I tell them, okay, based on my market analysis, I believe that the price range for this property, and again, I use a price range. Okay. The property is listed at 700,000. I tell them, I believe the price range in this property is between 650 and 675 based on the market analysis. I show it to them, and then I let them make the decision based on the information that I provide to them. Okay. Number 5, offer consultation. Again, that's part of your buyer presentation, is your 3 roles. And these are the words that I use. Okay. Mr. Buyer, my responsibility to you are the following. Number one is to be your real estate consultant. Number two, to be your negotiator. And number three, to be the coordinator of the transaction. Okay. And that is right off the bat. Those are some of the first words that I use during my buyer consultation. So here's the offer consultation, step number 5. Step number 6 is here. I just said it, negotiations. Okay. And when I reach the point of the negotiations, then I tell them in the negotiations, there could be 3 negotiations, as I shared earlier. One is on the upfront, on the sale and purchase price. B is on the home inspection. And C is on the appraisal. Here they have it, step number 8, the home inspection. Step number 9. Well, I'm sorry. So again, on the negotiation part, when you're in that buyer consultation, when you get there to that point, you tell them, I'm going to be your negotiator in these 3 parts of the transaction: sale and purchase, appraisal, and after the inspection. Step number 9. Apply for your mortgage and appraisal. You go through that process, how that would work. By the way, Austin, so as I was reading this, here, Jeff Glover, he's out in Michigan. Appraisals up there, they're around $400. What's the cost out here in South Florida?
About 585.
585. Okay. So you heard that, guys. Appraisals here in South Florida, they're 500 plus. So I would just say over $500.
And then for the bigger properties, like jumbo, $1 million, so you can go like 785.
785.
It really
Okay.
depends on the property. And so more the cheaper loan, you're gonna be more likely to achieve the return.
Okay. All right. So it just depends on where the property is being sold and that you're being involved with will determine the appraisal and actually the size of the property as well. Okay. So step number 9 would be applying for your mortgage. And this, again, you're going through these steps with your buyer one by one. Again, you could use that two sheet buyer consultation that I have. It's laid out in 10 steps. Here, it's laid out also in 10 steps. So he must follow the same system that I follow, but chances are he doesn't. Number 10, on the day of closing, and I'm going to go actually to the top of the consultation. So after everything goes through, after all the inspections are done, and I'm going to take you to the step number 8 in the buyer consultation. And in this presentation is actually step number 10. But this is what I tell the buyers. After the appraisal, after the inspections, after everything goes through, once we get to the day of closing on August 31st, September 30th, whatever day it is, 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours before the closing, if the closing's at 2 o'clock, you and I, we're going to go to the property to make sure that the property is in the condition that you contracted to acquire, that there is no personal items, but more importantly, that there's no one living there. Because if there is, any of these things if any of these 3 things happen, then I'm going to tell you, let's pause, let's delay the closing, and let's see what happens throughout the rest of the day before you close on the transaction. Because once you sign, you're responsible for anything that happens after the fact. Step number 9, you execute the closing documents, and then the celebration comes, the delivery to your keys, and Austin comes in with a bottle of wine, a bottle of champagne. I don't know what you bring to the closing table. All right, whatever they want. I usually show up with a gift card to Home Goods. That's usually music to the ears of the ladies. If it's to the men, then I got to get creative. But if there's a lady involved, I usually stop by Home Goods and pick up a $250, $300 gift card. And why do I choose Home Goods? And I'm selfish about that. Is because every time they go to Home Goods and they purchase something, chances are they're going to remember that they purchased it from the closing, from the gift card that I gave them when they're inside the house and they see it. Guess who they're going to remember? Ring camera. Okay. Okay. Cool. That's a good one for the men. Awesome. All right. So here we are at the closing. I'm going to take you to the buyer presentation. We're going to wrap up and I'm going to give you a couple more items of value before we sign off. So at the time of closing, you're probably wondering what all this costs you. Yes. Okay. So here's the good news. In many cases, we can get our fees covered entirely by the seller. Like most full service, full-time agents, we charge X amount to do everything we spoke about today. And when we go to write your offer, we're going to ask for concessions to cover those costs and any others we can negotiate for you. Depending on the situation, we may be able to get all, some, or sometimes none of the costs covered. But either way, you can rest assured that I'm going to fight tooth and nail to not only get you the home, but to keep you out of pocket closing costs as minimal as possible. As with any purchase, you will still have mortgage and title costs, and that is something your lender will walk you through. Sounds good? Perfect. Are you ready to put me to work for you? What do I hear? My audience. Yes. Great. Now, all we have to do is sign the buyer agency agreement, and that will enable me to help you get started, to help you get your home in the time you want at the price you want. Now, that is the end of the buyer consultation. I know I kind of went through a breeze. I think it was more important to show you and share with you what I did. Now, as you would see, well, this is not going to apply to most of you listening to me, but to the agents that are in my productivity coaching program, I have included here as part of this presentation, the buyer objections handbook. Okay. So there's a bunch of buyer objections for you to handle and for you to memorize, keep them there. Okay. On this one, this last page, or next to, or almost next to the last page. These are for buyers, and especially now that we're leaving the summer, going into fall. And a lot of the people are saying, we're thinking of waiting until next year after the elections, or up in Michigan, they usually wait until springtime. So thinking of waiting until spring, then think again scripts, okay? And least but not last, here is, I know most of you on the productivity coaching program, you have received a buyer questionnaire, which has the scripts, but here's something else that I'm going to share with you, and you feel free to use either the one I provided you or a buyer lead sheet. Okay, this is a little bit more cleaner, less info. Okay, and least but not last, if you want to follow Jeff Glover, and the reason I included this is so all of you could see the value that I bring to you as your productivity coach. So number one is Jeff Glover charges on a personalized one-on-one coaching, elite agent and admin coaching, $1,500 a month. That's whether you buy or sell any properties on any given month. One-on-one agent coaching, between $1,000 and $3,000 a month. Now, my agreement and my proposition and what we offer to you here at Canvas Real Estate in Miami Lakes is when you get to 3 to 5 transactions, you're going to have me for one-on-one coaching sessions once every other week or once a week, depending on what your needs are, for a minimum of half an hour. This is all included in your productivity coaching program. up to you cap until you get to $3 million. After $3 million, then you have the option to continue working with me and we could work out something. But I'm telling you, it's not going to cost you anywhere between $1,000 and $3,000 a month. And here's another thing that he offers. He offers these group coachings, okay, for all these things, all these different systems and all these different coaching lessons, okay? Look at this here, 16 weeks. Well, look at the price, $399 a month. That means a 4-month commitment. And whether you show up or not, guess what? He's going to swipe your credit card and you're going to be debited $1,600. Now, the value to you is that you have me for any questions, anything you want to discuss. We could have it. We could discuss it. We could plan for it. And here's another thing. When you work with these coaches, they give you their time, their schedule. Don't think that they're going to be like me, that I tell you, okay, Wednesdays and Fridays, I'm open between 2 and 5, and let's schedule then. No, they're going to tell you Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and that's your time. Why? Because these coaches, they have 10, 15, 20, or 30 clients that they service, right? So according, if they're working with 10 or 15 clients, they already have their schedule filled. And when you come on board with them, they're going to tell you, okay, we have an opening on Monday or we have an opening on Thursday, 10 o'clock on Monday or Thursday at 4 o'clock. And that's your coaching time. All right. So I just want to share this with you because these are options that are out there. Okay. I'm just your productivity coach here. And, I give you everything that I feel is important. I basically pour into you, but there's other options out there, but those other options are going to cost. Okay. So with that, I hope each and every one of you will find value in what I've shared. And before I sign off, Carolina, any big ahas, any additional big ahas from your part?
Okay.
You're good? All right. And Austin, how about yourself?
For me, it's really strategizing, having to do these little different things now, because change is hard and for anybody. And it really takes perseverance and guidance to do well in a new environment. So.
Absolutely. Yep. Awesome. All right, my peeps. Take care. And I wish you guys much success in your journey in your real estate career.